Hello YouTube! Welcome to the 10-minute update. We're having the Wooting livestream right now on Twitch. If you have never joined the livestream before, I really recommend you to join it. Every Friday, it's on a Friday every 2 weeks. I try to keep the schedule up to date on Twitch itself. Otherwise, keep an eye on our Discord announcements when we go live. So we're going to have a couple of things for this 10-minute update. We're going to talk about Wooting 2 HE Batch 1, Batch 2, the feedback on the Wooting 2 Lekker edition, and then a little bit about Wooting Desktop Mousepad and why is it taking so long. But we're going to expand on that during the live stream itself, and that's why you should be joining the live stream. So let's start with the Wooting 2 HE Batch 1. Kevin, what's happening with Batch 1?
So today is May 21st of May. The DVT is happening now, and it's not like EVT, which is small pieces. DVT requires almost 60 pieces of Wooting 2 HE samples because there's some validation tasks, something needs require like a carton, which is like 10. I think we do like 10 pieces packed into
10,
the
yeah.
cardboard. Carton box. So I'm gonna to now this week is they are making the PCBA, and this is all for the DVT state, and we are estimate being delivered finished DVT on should be next weekend, or at least the end of this month. Yeah. And then they are going to spend around 2 weeks from starting from June to do all the validation tasks, include drop-in test, include a lot of like environment and trustability test, and also for FCC and CE testing. Yeah. So with all these passes, we can just go through the next step, which is PVT. And we want, because this is already been made with lekker and actually just a regular Wooting 2. So we want to shorten a little bit like the period from the PVT to the mass production. We want to combine it together. And we assume this date will be around within 1 month, but we are still asking and communicate with the factory, and we will have more information like after we receive the whole DVT report. Should be the second week of June.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, so the key point of that is that we don't have a final mass production date until we've completed all the tests. So up until then, it's only an estimation. So also when it comes to shipping, it's all an estimation. And we do not have, we do not have the date right now. So as soon as we have a mass production date, we can really start fixing the schedule. So then we know exactly when we can start delivering, unless there's like a Suez Canal thing, right? Okay, then for batch 2. Now, batch 2 is tricky. Batch 2, now let's say with batch 1, if the whole DVT and FCC CE testing, that's all done, we could have, in theory, mass-produced batch 2 together with batch 1. That would have not been a problem because we already started acquiring all the parts and materials for mass production. So for example, we already have I think it's all the parts by now, but I'm just going to say the majority of parts because there is some parts that are not that are commonly shared with other keyboards which the manufacturer acquires and not us. So the majority of the parts for batch 1 are already in. Then there is some of the essential parts for batch 2 are also already in. And we could have done a mass production of batch 1 and batch 2 together on the same MP date as batch 1. However, there's one essential part which will not come in before the manufacturing date, no matter what we do right now. And that's the Hall effect sensor. And the Hall effect sensor is not something that we can replace. That's like the key component that makes the Wooting 2 HE the HE keyboard, Hall effect keyboard.
Back sensor.
So we expect the Hall sensors were expected to come in for both batch 2 by the end of May, but that has delayed now to the start of August. The reason why it got delayed to the start of August is because the manufacturer made I wrote it down here. I had a really good sentence for it, but I'm looking for it with my eyes while talking, and it's not working out. Okay, anyway, it comes down to the manufacturer made a mistake when they're making the wafer. So the wafer is basically this big plate of chips, out of which they it's not the chips exactly, but it's a big wafer of transistors, right? And then they cut it in these like small pieces and put it into small plastic packaging, and voila, there's your chip. Okay, that wafer needs to have a sensitivity. This is for reference. You will not understand what it exactly means. Of 4.0, but the sensitivity is 3.7, which is too low. We could have worked with a sensitivity that's a little bit higher, something like 4.2, but we cannot work with a sensitivity that's too low, because if the sensitivity of the sensor is too low, that means that we cannot detect the start of the press anymore. We can only detect it a few millimeters down. With the sensitivity that we have right now, we can already detect the key without pressing the key, so we can detect also the start of the press. That's how we get the 0.1 millimeter activation point. So 3.7 sensitivity is not acceptable. There's no way we're going to produce the keyboard with 3.7 sensitivity. So we basically said, nope, you're not going to deliver 3.7 chips to our factory by the end of May. We don't want it. You have to make it 4.0. Problem is, they can't just like, out of nowhere magically have another wafer with a sensitivity of 4.0. They would have to do a whole new production. However, I don't know if you've read the news a bit and watched some videos. There's a huge chip shortage on the market right now. Factories that make these wafers, right, are, how do you call that? They are full, there's long queues, takes a long time. Yeah, so new estimated time would be October or November. Was it November or October? One of the two. I already forgot. I forgot because it was just unacceptable long. Okay. Now, October or November, that's way too late. So we pushed for, it's kind of like talk with the manufacturer, or talk with the supplier, the manufacturer of the sensors, and explain to them why 3.7 is unacceptable, why we really need 4.0, what makes the difference, right? And also push them in that we can really not use 3.7. You really have to find a different solution. That changed their way of looking at the product and what they can do. And it looks like, no, not looks like, it is confirmed now. They are able to do something about it. So apparently they can put the wafer back into production, and by, I don't know how it exactly works, but it's a process of holding a coil close to the wafer, which will determine the sensitivity of the transistors. But they can modify the wafer from 3.7 to 4.0 sensitivity by going through a, let's say, there's a better word for this, but let's say refurbish process, or like a modification process. The disadvantage of the process is, and why you would usually not do this, is because there's a defect rate, meaning that of the wafer and all the transistors on there, there's a certain percentage that will just, rework, that's the word, thank you guys. And recalibration would also work, that's also a good word, thanks. There's a defect rate, and some transistors will just break in the process. And if there's too many of them that break, it could be of the wafers that they made for us, the amount they can deliver will not be enough to do the production we need to do. So they took a wafer, which has like, I don't know, can make like 40,000 sensors out of it from one wafer. They did a small test run to see if it works out or not. And it seems like, okay, they can do the rework and get sensitivity from 3.7 to 4.0. And the defect rate is only going to be between the 10 and 15%. Or they mentioned 10 and 12%, but I think it was 10 and 15.
Correct.
Which they mention is relatively low. And then calculating it over all the wafers that were made and taking the 10 to 15% loss, we would still be able to do this production and also the production of this other model we're planning. So we already have the sensors on stock. But this whole process is unfortunately not as simple as let's just throw all the wafers back in and then do the modification and we're done. Because if they screw up, right, at any of one of those wafers, that's a huge loss. So forgive me, Kevin, I forgot the detailed steps they're taking, but I don't think it really matters. It just really comes down to they're going to do a small sample group first, go through the whole cycle, double check if it all works out or not, and there's no issue. And then they're going to go through the bigger batch. And because there is a queue and they can't like continuously nonstop do these things because it's not, they outsourced this kind of silicone production. I forgot the word for it. Chip production, let's say, to professional factories like what was mentioned before, TSMC, for example. So they can't just work on this nonstop, right? So there's time needed, and this whole process is just going to take until the end of July, and we expect the delivery of the chips to be the beginning of August. All right. So that's the situation with the Hall sensors, and that's what's going to delay batch 2. That's going to be part of the next update, which is not there yet because I'm waiting for the DVT sample to arrive.
Yeah.
Now, Kevin is the lead on this, and he has a meeting every week with the guys, with the Hall sensor guys, to see how everything is going and if there's any delay in the schedule, because we're also pretty nervous about the whole process, because we need those sensors to do keyboard productions. Okay. Then we have Wooting to Lekker edition. Shit. You want me to do that? We've been getting a lot of feedback for the Wooting. So Wooting 2 Lekker editions were shipped and delivered over the last couple of weeks. We've been getting a lot of awesome feedback. I'm really happy to see that lots of people are really enjoying the Wooting 2 Lekker edition. And that specifically the typing feeling and the switches feel really great. Still have to see more like analog input related things, but I'm assuming a lot of people are also enjoying the features that it comes with, particularly the activation point. We're still rolling out some of the features that we promised, like tachyon mode and more profiles on the Lekker edition within these next 2 weeks. The utility is not completely done yet, but it's at a very good state. And I know tachyon mode is very wanted. It's coming. We're working on it. It's going to be okay. No worries. But we also got some feedback about some small issues that with the keyboard. Now there are 2 of them that I want to mention here because there's a good chance that you might be one of them. So first of all, the free snack bar that came with the keyboard. The snack bar is like the dye sublimated extra space bar that we give with the Lekker edition, and apparently that one is slightly warped. And warped means that it's bent upwards a bit, or well, in most cases it's bent upwards a bit. So if you put it on the table, you can seesaw it. Now some of them are worse than others, but in general, it's not a good thing. So we made a video, which is on our YouTube, which I can't really, I'll maybe throw it in the description. Eric throw it in the descriptions. And that video is a very quick and easy way to fix this issue by putting the spacebar in boiling water, taking it out, and just pressing it flat, basically. And then it will fix the warping issue. We didn't catch this issue because we only checked for spacebar warp on the spacebar that actually went on the keyboard and not the extra spacebar that came with the keyboard. Didn't think about doing that for incoming quality control. So that's a oopsie. Sorry guys. Oopsie. Sorry. didn't want that to happen, but thankfully it's an easy fix. Then there is another one. If you feel like one of your stabilizer keys are not as smooth as they should be, or there's like slight binding happening, that has to do with the stabilizers. The stabilizers are, okay, well, on this one, I don't have the yellow ones installed on this one. I have the black and blues installed here. It's a different one. But this is the stabilizer key. So what happened with Wooting 2 Lekker Edition, we bought the stabilizers stem and housing from what is called, the supplier is called Oshidu. They're a good supplier. They also make lots of keycaps. Their stuff is great, but the problem is that their stabilizer housing is slightly bigger than the plate hole that we have. So when you install the stabilizer, it slightly scrapes the plastic, and then there can be slight plastic burrs sticking out. And with some of the units that people receive, the plastic burr is just inwards, and then the stem of the stabilizer might like hit the burr, and that's what you're feeling. In other cases, it might like stop the stabilizer key a little bit, but it's very easy to fix by just removing. Well, if you have this issue, just come to Discord, come to the Lekker Hype channel, and there's a bunch of people that know how to help you. There's a guide actually on there how to fix that, how to improve it. There's actually also lots of people there that already took out the stabilizer, clipped both feet, and did a bunch of extra modifications to make it even smoother, which is really cool, really nice. Then there's an alternative and quicker fix to any kind of issue you might have. We had we had two people that I know of for which the stabilizer was not completely clicked in. And you can see here, this is great for the 10-minute update. You can see here from the stabilizer, there's a small clip there sticking out. That small clip there in the top. That's the clip that which has a hook attached. And if it's fully pressed in, that clip is straight. But if it's not fully pressed in, that clip is a bit inward. So I had two people for which that clip was a little bit inwards, means that stabilizer was not fully pressed down into the board. Press it down into the board and it will be fixed. And I think those were the two more like common ones. Then I'll give you two cases of a rare one, which was really shocking. But apparently on a couple of keyboards, the factory assembled the switch in the wrong orientation. So if you would look at the RGB light, for example, usually the RGB light's on the north side, but they accidentally installed the switch with the RGB on the east side. And what happens is that, first of all, one of the prongs of the switch has two prongs. One of the prongs like snaps off, and the other prong hits the LED light and rips it off the PCBA. It pushes it all the way down off the PCBA. And we have not gone through with this. This feedback has not been shared completely with the factory yet, because we're making a full report and waiting a little bit longer till we get all the issues, and then we're going to do a full report feedback. But what I'm suspecting is the reason is that the switches are installed on a jig, and then that jig is like pushed against the keyboard and then forces all the switches in, and then they can that way install the switches in one time. I'm not sure if they automated it with a machine yet, because they do have a machine for it, but I'm not sure if they did that for this production. So yeah, but that was a rare one. I had two cases of this, which was interesting. Okay. This is the end of I think we're reaching the end of the 10-minute update. And then now on the live stream, we're going to talk about desktop Mousepad and the struggles of developing this damn thing. And how it just keeps getting pushed back. So thank you for joining. Thank you for looking at the 10-minute update. Join the live stream next time. And do we want to say bye-bye to YouTube? Bye-bye. Bye-bye, YouTube.